Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thank you so much for being with us. Brought to you by the Ugly Grouper down on Anna Maria Island, Florida. If you're already in the area, great. If not, traveling that way, make sure you stop in where they've got great locally sourced seafood, craft beers and cocktails, and live music every day. And we've got Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Jim.
But it's a pleasure as always, especially now. It's week one coming for college football. I know that high school football already underway, but all Notre Dame, Indiana, Purdue, all hitting the gridiron this Saturday, and I'm here for it.
That's right. Season's back.
It is absolutely, and Purdue with a tough road to go coming up. Not the first game, of course. They'll take on Indiana State. Indiana takes on, Florida International. Notre Dame. Right. Who's Notre Dame taking on?
They have the game day game. They're at Texas A&M.
Oh, that's right. That is going to be a tough game that could put Notre Dame in a tough spot right off of the bat. We've already seen Florida State get dinged with an upset, which I wasn't. Well, I can't say that I wasn't surprised by that, but I was not big into Florida State being a top 10 team. I'm like, what are you banking that on? The same with Notre Dame. I don't know that they're a top 10 team, but we'll find out this weekend. Texas A&M, definitely a tough squad, tough meet, but man, it is here and time to go. Before we get to that, I saw that Purdue also picking up a commitment on the basketball court from Mount Vernon.
From Mount Vernon, that's right.
Point guard.
Ertel, guy, kind of a typical.
Is it pronounced Ertel?
I've not actually heard his name pronounced out loud. I'm not going to lie to you. It's one of those things where he's a little bit under the radar. So Purdue every once in a while just brings in one of these guys who is not really recognized yet by the recruiting boards, and this is one of those guys where they are ahead of the curve on this one, and sometimes that really works out for them, and it has in the past. So this is a guy obviously to watch out for going forward. Indiana elite guy in the 2026 class, to be clear. So he is going to be a junior this fall.
Yeah, so that's just the latest on that. But it's football season, baby. But speaking of basketball, a ton happening for Indiana this weekend. Not only do they open up the season against Florida International, but they are having an IU basketball reunion, first of all. So you're going to have a lot of names, that old-time names that are in town for that. And on top of that, it's a perfect weekend for them to be hosting Jalen Harrelson, who was one of their, well, not their top target in recruiting, along with a few others. But he is, it's just him on his visit, so he'll get all the attention. I would have thought that they would have tried to get a few other guys in on that particular weekend with all of the star power that will be there. But it is what it is. Yeah,
and again, and like you said, they do have. They can give him all the attention, right? Like it's all these guys are going to be there, and they're going to be able to talk to give Jalen Harrelson the lowdown on how things work in Bloomington. Obviously, this is a visit that IU has been looking forward to for quite a while. The staff have been preparing for this for a long time, and it's the first of. I'm not sure if it's the first official visit that Harrelson's taking, but there are several other visits that he is going to take. So they have to make a good impression in this one. And obviously this is the start of kind of how you're going to go about getting the 2025 class finished out, right? Like they have been preparing to get Jalen Harrelson, Braylon Mullins, Trent Sisley, those three guys. Those have been the guys they've been on for the last basically calendar year now, trying to get as many of those guys as they can to be part of the 2025 class. It's been building toward this like month-long stretch where they're all going to visit Bloomington. You would love to to have all three. It's unclear whether you have that is going to be a possibility. We'll see. But at the end, when signing day comes in November, you would like to have as many of those guys as you can to comprise a really good 2025 freshman recruiting class, and that this starts a really crucial stretch for the program.
Yeah, and it would be the first true recruiting class in my eyes that Indiana has put together. They have really portaled their way along so far. Yeah, I know that they brought a couple of guys in, but as far as going out and as a group, really bringing a group of guys in, especially some in-state guys, this is the first time in the 4 years of Mike Woodson's tenure that will happen.
Yeah, they're still looking. Obviously, C.J. Gunn was a guy from Indiana who signed with the Hoosiers while Mike Woodson was coach, but he wasn't a Woodson recruit. He committed to Archie Miller originally. So Mike Woodson is still looking for his first commitment from the state of Indiana, and he has a chance here to get three of them in the next couple of months. Now, again, that's a lot to ask, right? Getting all three would be a lot to ask. These are all very, very highly ranked recruits. A lot of really good programs want them. Purdue is also in on all three. They want all three as well. So we will see. But it is going to be a really fascinating kind of process to see play out here, because these guys all know each other, right? Harrelson, Mullins, Sisley, these guys, they're all aware of each other. They know each other. And so the kind of just the impressions that they get and how they share that is going to be really interesting. In the past, as far as I can tell from everything I've heard, this staff does a really good job on these visits. They're really good at the little details of making these guys feel welcome. And that they are going to have to be at their best here over the next month or so. It's going to be a really, really fascinating process to watch play out.
Well, and it is, because now with Malachi Moreno out of the picture, that makes it a little more palpable or possible that Indiana can land all three. There's no scenario that sees Purdue landing all three, in my opinion, because I don't think that they have a snowball's chance in hell of landing Harrelson or Mullins. They got in way too late on Braylon Mullins, and Harrelson is just, I just see that Indiana has really put the time in on him. Sisley, that could go either way. Trent Sisley, Matt Painter has out-recruited Indiana on Trent Sisley. I'll be the first to tell you that. Substantially out-recruited Indiana on him. But it's still, I don't know which way that, even knowing that, I mean, I know how many times Matt Painter's visited Trent, and it's a lot. It's way more than Mike Woodson and group has. But it doesn't always mean a lot. But Harrelson and Mullins, Harrelson, I think IU has definitely the inside track on him. Mullins, man, his recruiting has picked up so much from this summer. It's hard. I imagine it's very difficult for a player like that when you're going to a place, let's say UConn, who is all they've done is win back-to-back national championships over the last 2 years. And you've got the coach telling you, hey, you're only going to be here for 10 months. I think I saw that somewhere, which was ridiculous. To tell that to a player, I think is a dumb thing. First of all, you're kind of setting up. That's
unless you really believe it. Unless Dan Hurley looked at the tape and was like, "Oh, this guy is going to be out of here."
Okay. And I love his game. I love Braylon Mullins, and I love his game, and I love everything about him. And I know he's going to continue to get better. But do I think that he's going to be a one and done? No, I do not. I think that he needs to grow. I mean, there's just physicality parts of it. That he needs a couple of years of growth. He needs a couple of years playing at that level, because it's a different level. And so it's not just a different level to where you have one little go at it. Now you're ready. It depends on each player's different. I see him as I see him as a 2 to 3 year guy. Dalton Connect. Look at Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect wasn't a one and done, and Dalton Connect had an outstanding year last year, and look what it did for him. So I see Braylon Mullins as a Dalton Connect kind of a guy, but not next year. I mean, he's
Sure.
got to grow and learn and all of that. So my point being that now with Malachi Moreno out of the way, there was no way Indiana was going to land all four of those guys. Yeah. Now they have a chance to land all three, but I think they get 2 out of the 3. But we'll see. Mullins and Sisley. You know, they're not solid to me. I think Harrelson will end up in Bloomington. I have forecasted Mullins to IU, but he's got a lot of options. And but you also have the Mullins and Sisley connection from playing in AAU for so long. And on top of that, Trent Sisley's brother and sister already go to IU. So I'm going to assume that there's an IU-esque thing going through the family. Again, doesn't mean anything when it comes now to these days, because there's so much that goes along with it.
Yeah.
I don't know that Purdue can keep up with IU on NIL, to be honest with you. And that could also make a huge difference. Indiana is totally committed on the NIL side, and that could also make a huge difference. In addition to the fact, I think that Mike Woodson finally got it. Last year, we saw him go out and him and his team of coaches bust their ass on the recruiting trail in portal, whatever. That hadn't happened prior to that, personally. I don't think. I think that they were just easing along, and it was just okay. Now, after the season in which they did not make the tournament, he got the picture, and the IU faithful, they were not happy at all. And we go back to that senior day speech where he called people, you know, the true fans and all that junk, and Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway kind of. It almost was like they gave a canned speech for him. So you could tell the weight was there, but they went out and they got the job done. But that's a job you have to do every year. Every year you have to do that. And I'm wondering if that's something that they will have the capacity to do every year. But let's just talk about next year. And I think that if they were to land all 3 of those guys, that would be something.
Yeah, it absolutely would be. It's one of those things where it's been a long time, at least since I've been here, that there have been these high-level in-state players where IU and Purdue are in on both of them, like in on all of them. Quite frankly, I know you said you don't think Purdue has a chance at Harrelson, but they're in on him. They want him, right? And it's been a while since there's been that kind of class where it could go kind of either way. Notre Dame is in on some of these guys, right? Like Notre Dame wants these guys. And so it's a really fascinating kind of look at the landscape for in-state recruiting right now, and how these guys go is going to determine a lot about just the next year or two of the way in-state basketball has looked in college basketball in Indiana. So I'm really fascinated to see this play out.
And let me tell you, don't kid yourself. Indiana wants Trent Sisley.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Don't misunderstand what I'm saying to think that they don't want him. Oh, they definitely want him. I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
at that Indiana All-Star game, he was one of the best players on the floor at the Indiana All-Star game, maybe the best player on the floor at the Indiana All-Star. He was fantastic.
Is probably the most, without question, he's the most versatile. He gives you more than anybody else because he has different abilities. First of all, he's a solid 6'8". I don't care if anybody. I posted a picture. I don't post a lot of pictures, but last year I was down there seeing him, and I posted a picture next to him. I'm 6'1", and I was like, "Damn!" You could see. I was like, "Wow!" You really get a feel for it then. But not only that, because of playing for Heritage Hills and playing in a bunch of teams that were not that skilled, they had to double and triple team him. So he got a big taste of that for 2 years which doesn't do a lot for your game, but it does teach you to fight through all of that, because later on he's going to have to do that again and be able to fight down low. But also he can stand outside and knock the shots down. He's a good shooter.
Absolutely, he is. And he got much better as a passer from being double and triple teamed all of it. He's a good passer too. He can distribute the ball as well. So that's part of it. And then obviously he's going to Montverde this season, so he gets to play against really high level competition this fall and this winter. That obviously should get him prepared to play in the Big Ten a little bit more than Heritage Hills would have. That's going to be interesting to see how he kind of grows and matures from playing against that kind of competition as well.
And I agree, and agree with Herbal. Now he's going to get to play his position, as you said. So he's going to get to work on that. And he's already worked on the other. And now he gets to work on being a true wing, which Indiana hasn't had for a long time. I know Mackenzie Mbako is that guy, but here's something that Trent Sisley does that Mackenzie Mbako does not: play defense, and good defense. That's another thing that Trent brings. Trent is a good defender. One of Indiana's top targets is Mikel Brown. He shut him down in a game this summer. So he plays solid defense on top of that already. So he knows he is a very, very well-rounded player. He's probably the most well-rounded player of the guys they're chasing. I'm not saying he's the best, but he's the most well-rounded.
It is interesting to me how kind of the recruitments of Sisley and Mullins almost mirror each other a little bit, because Indiana was in on Mullins really early, and then Purdue got in later, and Purdue was in on Sisley really early, and Indiana got in later. And I'm kind of fascinated to see whether that makes a difference at all, right? Like you said, Indiana at one point did have the inside track on Mullins. I think that's fair to say. And then all these other schools got involved. Indiana was in on him early. All these other schools got involved, including Purdue. With Sisley, it was kind of the opposite. Purdue was in on him really early, and because he is exactly the type of player that Matt Painter has turned into, like an all Big Ten guy repeatedly over the years, just a really versatile, can do everything kind of guy. And then IU and some other teams got in on him a little bit later. And so I think that we're going to see how much impact that has in today's recruiting world, which, again, that's why some of this stuff is really, really fascinating.
Well, and as Herbal says, he says he knows personally that he's developed a great relationship with Painter, and whether that's true or not, I believe that, because there's no way Matt Painter has visited him double-digit times, and sometimes he wouldn't even get to talk to him much. Just go watch him play and be in the gym. Why that wasn't the case for Indiana, I don't know. I'm not going to judge, since I don't know everything of why they didn't, but I know that's a massive difference, and there's no way that doesn't matter. It makes it more difficult for someone to tell you no. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And which is what Painter is working on. So, but at the end of the day, what's best for Trent, what's best for his game, what's best for his situation, the NIL, all that goes together. Are you looking at the team? What will Purdue be projected to be like when he gets there? What's Indiana going to be projected to be like when he were to arrive? But the thing about all of these guys, I think all of them are expected to make their decision in the early signing period this year.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. This is coming within like a month, maybe 6 weeks. Probably we're gonna have decisions from these guys. Like it is going to be pretty soon, and they're all gonna come kind of in a row. And it's gonna be like, okay, going into the season, there is going to be genuine momentum for some team. It's unclear which one at this point, but going into the season, we are going to have a really interesting kind of referendum on the state of recruiting in the state of Indiana. And I am really, really interested in how that plays out.
Absolutely. And for those that didn't see it or hear me talk about it yesterday, coming up on October 27th, Indiana will visit Tennessee in Chattanooga to take on the Volunteers in a charity game, which that's going to be a cool, I like that. I love that. I would like to see a few more of those instead of the Bahamas thing, mainly because the Bahamas is so crazy expensive. I think that's not right to do to fans. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that exhibition game on October 27th. So much better than the stupid secret practices that were never secret.
Yes.
That was funny. That was funny.
We need to take a break.
Absolutely. We've got more coming up with Dylan Sinn here on the Indiana Sports Beat. We'll talk some football when we come back because it's time. It's time from college football. Back with more right after this.
Segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Yeah, I think we really are going to get a kind of an inside look at how much getting in on someone early really helps. Because like IU was in on Braylon Mullen before basically any other power conference team. They wanted him early, and then all his recruiting skyrocketed, and UConn and Kansas and Duke were like, "Hey, come play for us." It's like, okay, let's see how much building that relationship early on mattered. I am fascinated by that.
Yeah, I'm more fascinated by. I think that Indiana ends up with. Come on, man, why are you not with Mullins? Everybody thinks that Mullins and Harrelson, and I'm like, they're two different players. I mean, Harrelson could play three positions if you want to be honest with me. He could play the point, play the one, play the two, and he could play the three. He's 6'8" or 6'7" for God's sakes.
Yeah, he's big
and so athletic. But he's gone. He initially the uniqueness was he was a point guard. Now Mullins isn't a point guard. He's more the two.
Yeah.
It's very ironic. It's very unusual to have your point guard taller than your two guard, which would be the case no matter. Does Jalen play the point, or is he going to play the two, or does it matter? I think that they're going to run more of a three-guard offense. I think it's going to get to that.
Because you're still going to have Miles Rice when these guys come in, right? Like you might not have Kanan Carlisle because Carlisle might be drafted after this season, but you're still going to have Miles Rice, who they expect to be there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, Gabe Cupps. Like I think Gabe Cupps start when these guys get there. I don't think Gabe Cupps is going to be a very big part of the team this year, but I think starting in 25, 26. He's going to be a very important player for Indiana. He's going to be a good player. So you could have
he already is a good player.
Yes.
You didn't get a good look at him last year. I think that he was a kid that is going to be very good, but just wasn't ready to do it yet.
Physically, he wasn't ready last year, but I think he will be. Like he's going to be a good player for them.
Yeah, he's smart. He's athletic.
5, 3.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday of the opening week 1 of college football, and I'm here for it, baby. I'm excited. There are a couple of games. Good thing you didn't get married. You wait to get married and get married on October 12th. I just called those games out a little bit ago, Dylan, but they're on I already went way past it where I listed them. But just on October 12th, there are 4 massive games. Number 2, Ohio State scheduled to play at number 3, Oregon. Number 4, Texas to play at number 16, Oklahoma. Number 6, Ole Miss scheduled to play at number 13, LSU. Number 8, Penn State at number 23, USC. That is incredible. Number 1. Number 2, all 4 of those are conference games between 2 Big Ten, 2 SEC games.
Yeah.
And getting Ohio State and Oregon during the season, I think it's fantastic. Getting Penn State and USC during the season, fantastic. Now, Oklahoma, Texas is something we already had, but they could mix that up, and it could be Oklahoma, LSU, and Ole Miss and Texas, because that'll be the case at some point. But, yeah, good thing you didn't get married on that day.
Well, that's exactly why. That's why we didn't. We looked at a time. It was like, all right, the spring is the time for us. Like that's when we knew that there would be the least amount of distraction. We waited until the NCAA tournament was over. We waited before football season. Baseball season hadn't really gotten into full swing yet, so that was April was the time. We knew that.
Smart man. So football now. We're days away from, I know they had week 0, but that doesn't count. Although there was a nice little upset with Florida State going down, but that shows me that it's going to be exciting. That's the 12 playoff team is going to be exciting because teams are going to move in and out of that spot without question. Teams at the top are going to be harder to knock out, but someone mentioned earlier the Indy Star, which normally doesn't, I don't know that they do predictions, but predicted a finish of 8-4 for Indiana, which I think is the true. I'm kind of right on with that. I've said that 7-5 is the bottom, but as I look at the schedule, and this is a great change from any year past. Let me be the first to say this. Normally, when you look at the schedule, you can go, okay, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss.
Yeah.
Nah, maybe. I look up there, I see one game as of right now that I say, okay, that's probably a loss. One game, and that's at Ohio State. That includes having Michigan on this schedule in Bloomington. And I say that right now, I don't know about Michigan. And I've seen, not only do I have doubts about them, everybody does, because they're not predicted to finish in the top 12 right now of the college football playoffs. And it makes sense. They lost a ton. They've got a new coach who is unproven. He's the youngest coach that Michigan has ever had since like the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And they're still under a bunch of scrutiny. I'm not a believer in Michigan.
Sure.
Michigan State, same with them. They got turmoil. Washington, totally new team.
I will say one team you should be a believer in. I think that I don't think it's a guaranteed loss for Indiana, but I do think a team, maybe the team that is going to give them the second most trouble on their schedule is Nebraska. Nebraska is going to be good this year. Yes. Nebraska is going to be good this year. I'm not sure exactly how good, but like 9-3 would not surprise me for Nebraska.
The question is, how well does their true freshman quarterback play? And the fact that Indiana doesn't play Nebraska until game 7, which will be 8 weeks, 2 months into the schedule. You're not so much a freshman by then. You've had too much of college football, and more than at least half of those are probably conference games. You've gotten the taste of it. Indiana's only advantage there is being at home. But I completely agree with you. You've got to watch out for Maryland. They're also a team that has continuity. They didn't lose their coach. They still have their coach, so they didn't.
They did lose their quarterback. They did lose the 4-year starter, quarterback. So I don't know about Maryland. There's a very good chance that Indiana and Maryland are both 4-0 when that game comes, and we still know nothing about either team, which is going to be kind of fascinating because Maryland plays a really soft early season schedule. Indiana is the first basically real team on their schedule, and so. If Indiana beats UCLA, I think both of those teams are going to be 4-0 going into that game.
But if Indiana beats UCLA on the road, that will solidify what I think. And I will definitely give the advantage to Indiana. They're at home on top of it. So
yeah, absolutely. That would be a game. I think that's a game that if they are both 4-0, that's a game that is going to be a crazy, crazy atmosphere. I think it's one of those things where it'll be the first time the fans have really kind of bought in, because obviously if Indiana does go and beat UCLA on the road. Then you have a game against Charlotte the next week. Yeah, there's going to be some fans there for that because it'll be exciting to be 3-0, but it's not a good team, right? And so then you have the next week where you have a conference team coming in, a team that's beaten you 3 years in a row. Can you go out and get a win at home? I think the crowd would be crazy for that. I think that'd be something to really look forward to.
Yeah. And I hate looking ahead to games. Well, I don't hate it, but I know that it's kind of pointless because you've got 2 games to play before that. But let's be realistic. Indiana is not losing to Florida International at home. Indiana is not losing to Western Illinois at home. It ain't happening. I'm sorry. So I'm going to take the privilege. It's my show. I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to take that UCLA game is a linchpin game for a possible 6-0 start. And I know how crazy it sounds because we're talking about Indiana football. But you know what? Let's get a little crazy, people. Why not? Indiana has such a schedule set up that allows that kind of talk. And no one would have ever dreamed of being able to go to the Rose Bowl and it be considered a win. I'm like, I do not see Indiana losing that game. For one thing, I look at the head coaches. You've got a head coach for UCLA that has never been so much as a coordinator and now is a head coach of a program and was kind enough to let everyone, all of us, know that UCLA is located in Los Angeles. So, and he was still getting made fun of that I was watching the Big Ten show last night. They brought up at UCLA and they go, they're in Los Angeles, by the way. So yeah, he's not going to live that one down, but 4 out of your first 5 games are at home.
Yeah.
4 out of your first 5. And the only road game is a winnable game that I think they're going to win. So a 5-0 start, that is going to change the belief of a lot of people around the country for this Indiana team. And then their 6th game is at Northwestern, which I'm not. Northwestern is always a capable team, but this is going to be weird. They're going to be playing on a soccer field in essence.
Yeah, there are going to be more Indiana. If Indiana's 5-0, there are going to be more Indiana fans than Northwestern fans at that game.
Oh, without question. That's kind of how it is for basketball.
Yeah. Like it is going to be. I don't know if they get to 6-0. I think there are so many new pieces that it takes a little bit to gel. I wouldn't be surprised they lost to Maryland or Northwestern.
And I agree with that. I can see a slip up. Hey, all it takes is an injury, a turnover at the wrong time, especially when you are on the road. You just never know. Maryland, again, I'm not putting Maryland into a junk category because I don't know enough about them. Just because I know they've lost their quarterback. Well, you know what? They make more. That's what the portal is for. So we'll see. But Philip says he's got Indiana 5-7. It says relying on a bunch of mid-major transfers up is exactly what Colorado didn't end up well. Here's the difference. Pro Football Focus is very highly regarded. All these guys, three out of their top 10 transfers, Pro Football Focus listed the top 10 transfers in the country. I'm talking Miami, Florida, Ohio State, doesn't matter. Indiana had 3 of those. That's not mid-major talent. That's top-level talent.
I do think the other part of it is that so many of these guys are guys that Curt Cignetti has coached before. They know the system. They've been in the system. They're multi-year experienced starters. So I think that helps. I also think that Indiana's a little bit better along the lines than Colorado was last year. That was what ultimately torpedoed Colorado last year, was that they brought in a ton of skill position talent. And they were able to have some explosive games early, but they struggled along the line. They couldn't protect the quarterback. Now, Indiana, I do think that the Nick Kidwell injury is bigger than I think we've really just like it. It is a big deal because they basically had 5 high-level offensive linemen coming into this year, and there's not a lot of depth at that position. Of all the positions on the field, that is maybe the position where they had the least depth. They lost 3 starters. They brought in 3 starters. They lost one of those starters in camp. So now you have to either Bray Lynch or Drew Evans is going to have to start, who has never started a game before. And that is going to be something that, that's one of the reasons I think they're going to take a little bit to get going. I do think they beat Florida International and they beat Western Illinois to start the season. I don't disagree with you there, Jim, but and I want to believe they beat UCLA because I don't think UCLA is going to be particularly good. But I do think that line is going to take a little bit to gel because of the continuity issues that they had during camp where Kidwell got hurt. They were expecting him to be kind of a linchpin of that line, right? That was a big piece for them. And so that you had to reset a little bit with 2 weeks left before the season. And so I do think that's the difference between them and Colorado, though, is eventually they will have a better line than Colorado did and a better defensive line because Colorado couldn't stop the run at all toward the end of the year, and their defense was just rough, especially after Travis Hunter went down. So I do think that Indiana will have a better defense as the season goes on. I would guess I have said it before. My guess is 6-6. I don't think the ceiling is quite where some people are thinking it's going to be, but I think 6-6 would be fine. 6-6, and then you go win a bowl game for the first time in 30 years. The season's a success.
It would be. I'm just curious, what are the 6 teams that are going to beat Indiana?
So that's the thing is that there's so many teams on this schedule that we don't really know about, right?
They're not losing. I can tell you right now, they're not losing to Purdue this year.
I don't think so. We don't know a whole lot about Washington. We don't know a whole lot about Michigan, as you said. We don't know a whole lot about Michigan State. We don't know a whole lot about Maryland. We don't know a whole lot about Northwestern. These we don't know a whole lot about Nebraska. These teams are all teams that could end up being better than people expect, right? And so the way college football works nowadays with the portal, Indiana is an unknown to a lot of people, right? Because they brought in so many new guys. That's a lot of teams on their schedule brought in a ton of new guys. So it's really hard to project before the season starts. I do think they are a good team. We're going to see how tough that schedule ends up being.
Absolutely. Dylan, it's always a pleasure, brother. Looking forward to where are you going to be this weekend?
I'll be in Bloomington. I'll be there.
I'll see you then, my friend. Looking forward to it.
All right, Jim. Looking forward to it. I'll see you then.
You bet. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Kyle Neddenrip from the Indy Star joined us on the way.